Unique amongst the nightmares that can be inflicted upon mortals in the worlds of D&D, undeath is more than just a physical change. In most D&D worlds, upon death, the soul moves on to an afterlife. Undeath perverts this. Fundamentally, it corrupts a soul's journey, trapping it in an eternal agony of a decaying corpse, often with the loss of their mind and a perpetual, hollow hunger for life. This hunger for life is shared by nearly all undead, driven to extinguish all life across the world. Each death, each life undone caused by the undead can lead to even more undead as victims rise in their own undeath via either foul necromancers or the curse of undeath given to them by the undead that killed them. Every fallen ally, innocent and friend, turns into a new enemy, a horde of undead growing faster than the heroes can thin it out. To me, it's this horde of undead that is the most terrifying part of undeath. The personal horror of seeing deceased loved ones as shambling, mindless corpses forced to attack, combined with the existential horror of a war of attrition fighting an undead horde that has no self-preservation and will never stop. The evils of the world that rely on the undead as their strength know all too well about the power of the undead horde. While the horde of the undead can replenish their own numbers and even swell as the dead quickly outnumber the living with some necromancy, sometimes that is not enough for an enterprising necromancer or lich. After all, these undead masters can only be in so many places at once and only have so much death-defying magic at their disposal. Wouldn't it be nice to have some help? The undead host, the pus dragon, the bloody hive. Let's talk about the Hullathoin. So, what are we going to be covering? In this episode, first we're going to talk about what a Hullathoin is. Next, we'll dive into its origins or try to figure out the possible origins for the Hullathoin. After that, we'll explore how I rebuilt the Hullathoin for the 2024 edition of D&D and how they fare in combat. We'll close out then with some ideas how to add the Hullathoin not only as a monster of the week, but as part of an ongoing campaign. Hullathoin. Hullathoin. There, I think I got it. Anyway, the Hullathoin oozed into existence with the 3rd edition Fiend Folio book. Not to spoil where we're going to go with the Hullathoin, but it wasn't the picture that first drew me to this undead monster, but its rules and mechanics. Because there are so many, and they're so diverse, I knew in my heart of hearts that this monster was crafted, and cruelly so. From remote mountain passes to the darkest bogs, to ancient forests, to the furthest caverns from sunlight, one might be unlucky enough to find one of these hulking, weeping sword-covered monstrosities. Hullathoins are undead creatures that are dragon-like in appearance, covered in weeping sores that are always threatening to burst, as well as being surrounded by unnatural clouds of buzzing insects. Unlike a lot of undead, the Hullathoins have remained sentient in undeath. Sentient and cruel, with a hatred for the living that goes beyond simply trying to kill them, they also deform the bodies of their victims. But there's more. The Hullathoin is no necromancer nor spellcaster, but it can take control and command undead as skillfully as a powerful cleric of death, or a necromancer, or a lich. But there's more. The Hullathoin is going to be finding plenty of undead thanks to its blood fiend swarms that use the huge undead as a nest. These abyssal locusts can create vampire spawn from those they kill for the Hullathoin to command. But there's more. Those sweeping sores I talked about, a Hullathoin can spew forth the pus from its many sores on its body, creating a ring of pus so acidic that it can wear away a victim's strength. There are just so many odd abilities. It makes me think someone wanted an undead lieutenant to help lead an undead army, but didn't want to bring in another necromancer who could cause them problems or lead to a fight for dominance. So instead, they thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool to have an undead that could command? But they didn't want to have magic, so they gave it the Abyssal Locust to create undead for it, so it can command those new undead. Dragons with their breath weapons are pretty cool, but that seems really dangerous to me. What if it could just squeeze some sores and shoot out pus? Oh, or those locusts too. Oh, and also, why not give the Hullathoin tentacles? Tentacles that can deform flesh. Oh, also, let's make it a hunter with blind sight and scent. To find living so it can make more undead, I guess. Also, just kind of looking at the Hullathoin, it almost seems like it's designed to be a punishment. I'm not sure how to exactly articulate this, but the Hullathoin is powerful, has a lot of skills and capabilities, but all of that is just the good enough versions of those. Thus, my question, where did the Hullathoin come from? With its single entry in Fiend Folio, here are the interesting bits that we know about the Hullathoin. It's a CR15, so a pretty potent undead. It has distinctive preference for the dark places of the world, but it is noted that it can be found anywhere. The languages it knows is common and, curiously, draconic. I did not add the curiously bit either. That's directly from its monster entry, which is curious. A Hullathoin can take control of nearby undead as if it was a powerful cleric, meaning a lot of undead, and it can do some pretty powerful ones as well. It has blind sight of 60 feet, which is pretty unusual for an undead. Also, nothing pleases a Hullathoin more than totally deforming its victims with its tentacles. Finally, it can release swarms of blood fiends, an abyssal monster that can create vampire spawn, which is weird for a couple different reasons, but we'll get there. Undead have to come from a corpse in one way, shape, or form, and I think the Hullathoin are forged from the corpses of dragons. In particular, black dragons, at least initially. First, look at the picture of the Hullathoin. You can see the dragon underneath all that undead flesh and pus sacs. With the creature that is draconic in any way, the power of a dragon makes those draconic traits dominant. Next, blind sight might not really be an undead thing, but it is a dragon thing. The deforming of victims strikes me as very in keeping with the sadism and the need to cause suffering and ruin of the black dragon. Why black dragons? Why do I think a black dragon was the first of the Hullathoins? First, black dragons lair in the underground, underdark, and just in general dark places like the Hullathoin. Hullathoins are described with, quote, the most distinctive aspect of a Hullathoin is that its molten gray and black body seems to carry some sort of wasting disease. Black dragons, as you can probably imagine, have a black body even beneath the scales. The ring of pus spews out a potent acid, the very element of a black dragon's breath weapon, and in 5e, its rend attacks and basically its combat spells are also acid. Finally, and this is the one that really clinched it for me, the insect plague spell that existed in 3rd edition and cloud of insects that show up in 5e as a black dragon legendary action. Both speak of a black dragon being able to unleash insects at their enemy, a capability possibly taken to the extreme with the Hullathoin. An adult black dragon is a CR 14, close to the Hullathoin's 15. All of that taken together, a black dragon just seems like the perfect initial corpse for the Hullathoin. The question is now, well, who actually created them? Of all the Hullathoin's mechanics, here's the one that really stood out: Exude Blood Fiend Swarm. As an action, a Hullathoin can send forth a swarm of blood fiend locusts to attack its foes. Swarms of these creatures live in the Hullathoin's pus-filled sores. They do not attack the Hullathoin or its undead minions. What are blood fiend locusts? The blood fiend locusts also joined us with the Fiend Folio of 3rd edition. A CR8 swarm, blood fiend locusts are to living creatures what locusts in our world are to crops, capable of draining away the life energy of a humanoid until it dies. Should a blood fiend locust succeed in draining away this life and killing a humanoid, that body will rise as a vampire spawn. Blood fiend locusts are noted in their entry to have been, quote, created to carry the horrors of the abyss to other planes. Given how closely the blood fiend locusts and the Hullathoin are linked, it strikes me that the Hullathoin also has to have some sort of abyssal connection. The infinite, chaotic evil outer plane that serves as the home to all demons, the abyss is known for its virtually endless layers of malevolence and destruction. Each layer is usually ruled over by a demon prince or a demon lord, each unique with hostile terrain, flora, and fauna. It is not noted which of the layers of the abyss that the blood fiend locusts come from, nor who made them. However, vampires, and thus vampire spawn, are known to inhabit the Thanatos layer of the abyss, along with a lot of other undead. The 113th layer of the abyss, Thanatos, is the cold, half-frozen wasteland of tundra and bleak mountains under a lightless black sky filled with ash-gray clouds. This layer of the abyss is so infused with the energy of undeath that it saps the life energy out of the living by just being there. And those that die on Thanatos will rise as undead shortly afterwards, while endless hordes of skeletons and zombies roam the waste. Vampires that inhabit Thanatos one might consider the nobility of the lair, bickering nobility that fight amongst each other to gain audience and favor with Thanatos' ruler, Orcus. One of the most iconic and powerful villains in D&D since the very beginning, Orcus is the demon prince of undeath. Basically, when it comes to evil undead, he's the top dog. Orcus's nihilistic goal is to extinguish all life until only undead remain, all bound to his will. Or maybe he just wants to kill all undead after that, so it's just him. Either way, not great for everybody that exists. On the power level of a god, Orcus not only commands the undead, but he makes them too, using his own magic as well as his potent Wand of Orcus artifact. Throughout the millennia, Orcus was believed by sages to be responsible for creating the rituals and curses used to create the first of several types of undead, including ghouls and death knights. I see the blood fiend locusts as a creation of Orcus. I don't think there's too special of a story here. Orcus turned common locust swarms into bloodsuckers that can make, more bloodsuckers. Pretty straightforward. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that given his power level, Orcus can create new types of undead kinda at will. An undead, like the Angel of Decay. Found in Libris Mortis, the Angel of Decay is a horrific, large undead monstrosity that serves as a blasphemous mockery of true celestial angels. A mockery because they once were angels. There's a lot to talk about with the Angel of Decay, perhaps even worth its own video in the future, but here's the short version. Essentially, the story goes that a legion of angels went after Orcus during one of the rare times he left the Abyss. Unfortunately for those angels, Orcus is still pretty tough outside his lair. Orcus slew every last one of them, and then to add insult to death, he raised them as the first Angels of Decay, who, interestingly enough, are CR15 monsters. I bring up the Angels of Decay as an idea of how the Hullathoin could have come about in the first place. In 5th edition, black dragons are the master of ruin and death to a degree. They're even noted to work with undead. Quote, some ally themselves with powerful undead such as Death Knights and vampires. What's even more interesting is this line, quote, morbid cultists and doomsayers frequently gather in the dragon's service, bringing with them undead terrors that answer to the black dragon and aid it in spreading ruin to nearby bastions of beauty and peace. Spellcasting wise, 5th edition has black dragons with the spells Speak with Dead and Create Undead. Here's my theory. What if a black dragon got ideas above their station? What if this black dragon, surrounded by necromancers, sentient undead, and other sycophants, got it into their head that they were the true master of death? Vampires are the nobles of Thanatos, so what if one of them got exiled and became a favored follower of a black dragon and convinced that black dragon to try to lay claim to Thanatos? Like all chromatics, a black dragon is arrogant, which manifests with cruelty, ego, and a sense of entitlement. The entitlement is key to the story. It's noted in 5th edition, quote, ancient black dragons strive to create vast, undead domains where they are the greatest things that remain. What is the greatest dead domain that there is? Thanatos. All they have to do is take the throne, from Orcus. Ask the Angels of Decay how that worked out for him. My theory goes that this black dragon with their vampire followers head to Thanatos to overthrow Orcus. As you can imagine, it did not go well. Honestly, it probably didn't even take very long for Orcus to win, especially in the seat of his power. Still, you can't let a good corpse go to waste. I think there's a particular irony that the Orcus made the Black Dragon's corpse a leader of undead, but with no power to make their own. Instead, they are forced to host and rely on the blood fiend locusts to create vampire spawns. Another delicious irony is that the dead dragon's primary servants are the lesser forms of undead that arrogantly made him believe he could overthrow a demon lord. When the first Hullathoin, which perhaps that was the black dragon's name. Anyway, when the first Hullathoin proved to be so useful, Orcus made some more and allowed the secrets of their creation to spread to his followers. That's my theory anyway. A Hullathoin is a shepherd of undead, while fully capable of creating plenty of new corpses to join its ever-growing horde. As a CR 15 undead, the Hullathoin is going to be dangerous in a fight. Not just because it was probably once a dragon, but because it's always going to have a swarm of undead at its beck and call. A Hullathoin has a pretty typical AC and hit points for its challenge rating, though it is quite fast with a speed of 60. Another place that it stands out is its resistances and immunities. Its resistances include acid, fire, thunder, and necrotic, which covers a lot of spells. Acid originally wasn't a damage type that the Hullathoin resisted in any way, shape, or form, but my theory of quote-unquote descending from black dragons, I thought it was fitting to add. When it comes to immunities, we have the typical undead immunities with a bonus immunity to cold and lightning damage. When it comes to traits, the Hullathoin has magic resistance to make spellcasters have an even rougher time. The standout trait, however, is martial undead. The Hullathoin is dangerous by itself, but its real threat comes from the undead that follow it. I wanted a trait to really help emphasize its role as a pack leader, and the martial undead trait fit the bill to make its undead far more threatening even at higher levels of play. Now, to make sure it has the undead that it needs, as a bonus action, the Hullathoin can rebuke or take control of nearby undead to add to its collection. If it's a mindless undead, it stays under the Hullathoin's thumb forever, but intelligent undead can keep trying to break free. As mentioned before, the Hullathoin is explicitly not a spellcaster, nor can it raise undead on its lonesome in any way, shape, or form. I think it was deliberate on Orcus's part, twisting the knife that the mighty Hullathoin is forcibly dependent on others to achieve its full might, even if those others live under its flesh. Originally, I had this as an action, but there's no way it would be used in combat like that with all its other actions that the Hullathoin has. It's a pretty niche ability, a ribbon feature really. I mean, how often are there going to be undead around that are not already a part of the Hullathoin's horde? I mean, unless the party brings some along or an enemy undead master appears. I do recommend, if a DM gets the chance to set up a Hullathoin in a graveyard or such, that there could be undead just hidden or dormant to give the party a delightful surprise mid-combat. As part of its multi-attack, the Hullathoin can use Bite or Deforming Tentacles 3 times. The Bite attack is pretty straightforward. It hits hard and can give the poison condition. The Deforming Tentacles also deal damage, but more importantly, they decrease the target's charisma score and will go incapacitated if they get to 0. Not killed, incapacitated. Perfect for a bunch of blood fiend locusts to feed on. I love it so much that the Hullathoin gets such pleasure from twisting the flesh of others so it can have a bunch of ugly undead around it. Ugly vampire spawn for the most part. I also love how dangerous this is. While a bunch of classes use charisma, many more find it useless and use it as a dump stat, meaning each swing could take the otherwise high hit points fighter or barbarian out of the fight. Now, here's an exceptionally terrifying fact for you. Deforming Tentacles is but one of the 2 actions the Hullathoin can use to reduce a character's ability score. The Ring of Pus acts as a poor dragon's breath weapon. It unleashes a 30-foot emanation originally from the Hullathoin that deals acid damage and can reduce a target's strength score on a failed dex save. Thankfully for everybody, the Ring of Pus has a recharge of 5 or 6. Amazing crowd control, especially for the melee combatants that rely on strength that are going to be in range of the ring. They'll have high strength for sure, but the pus will help reduce the damage that the Hullathoin takes, plus maybe they catch a low strength wizard. Any ability damage actions instantly makes a monster far more dangerous, allowing it to punch above its weight class, and the Hullathoin has 2 of those. Ability damage actions start a clock on a fight, since characters will fall far more quickly to ability damage than hit point loss, and only specific magics can heal ability damage during a fight. I really cannot stress this enough. The fact that the Hullathoin reduces 2 separate abilities as actions, and thus has 2 clocks on everyone, on top of the damage that they're dealing not only from themselves, but their horde is dealing, I think this is actually pretty exciting. For DMs, absolutely terrifying for players. Finally, we come to the bugs inside the beast. I debated for a while on how to make the extrude swarm ability work in 5th edition. While I like the Bloodfiend locusts as monsters, adding them to the Hullathoin's action became way too wordy and clunky. Also, the ability needed a second stat block. I clearly love making monster stats, so that part wasn't a problem. It just complicated things, especially if there was a lot of locusts on the field. I ended up trashing the Bloodfiend locusts as a monster and just went with a sphere that sticks around for a while that basically imitates the effects of the locusts. Those effects being energy drain, which drains levels, a mechanic thankfully not used in 5th edition, as well as the classic swarm trait distraction, and reanimate, which makes things that it kills into vampire spawns. Reanimate and distraction were easy mechanics to add. Those that die via the swarm come back as vampire spawn, and creatures within the sphere can't concentrate. Clean and simple. With no interest in bringing back the massive mechanics needed for level loss in 5th edition, I went with necrotic damage on a failed save. However, I did want something threatening for the swarm, something to make players not want to be in the spheres that straight damage wouldn't necessarily do. I ended up adding the kicker of if the person making the save fails by 5 or more, they gain a level of exhaustion on top of the damage. The exhaustion condition sort of replicates the effects of the 3rd edition level loss. Plus, I think it adds the right amount of fear for players, not wanting to get that particular condition. I made Extrude Swarm a Constitution save, one that most players are pretty good at to lessen the sting just a little bit for the players, while still keeping the overall ability pretty threatening. Because I can think of nothing more threatening than gaining multiple levels of exhaustion, especially since there is no limit to the number of spheres that are out there. Besides sending out its hordes of undead to overwhelm its opponents, I see the Hullathoin as wanting to get in the middle of the action, which shouldn't be a big problem thanks to its 60-foot speed. Basically, everything in its kit needs to be near its opponents to be at its most effective, starting with Martial Undead. However, the Hullathoin should rush in first before it's undead. Once in melee, the Hullathoin should use its Ring of Pus to get a bunch of damage on everything around it, but more importantly, the strength reduction, which affects its undead, which is why the Hullathoin should get into combat first. After that, it's a question whether to bite or use deforming tentacles. That depends on who's nearby. For me, start with deforming tentacles to get that big, beefy opponent grappled and get the charisma loss on top of the strength loss. That way, their likely dump stat of charisma is getting them close to death without needing to go through all those pesky hit points. After that, I would probably have the Hullathoin bite to get the poison condition on the opponent, so any attack swings are hampered. Beyond that, I would just keep using deforming tentacles until they're out of the fight. For someone with high charisma, I would still start with deforming tentacles to get them grappled, but then it's bite all day. Bite hits harder, and the poison condition sucks when you get it. However, no matter what, with the multi-attack, I would always use Extrude Swarm. Extrude Swarm is the Hullathoin's ace in the hole. Extrude Swarm combines damage, a terrible condition, into a nice area of effect, area of control. That 10-foot sphere can cut off areas of the map to the players who don't want to risk getting exhaustion. Lasting a full minute, the Hullathoin can force those weaker spellcasters that like to stay back, force them closer, or keep that raging barbarian back. A fight that goes long enough, and if the battlefield is small enough, a Hullathoin can basically choke off most of the positions on the board, where the players will always have a bad and worse choice about where to go. The only reason not to use Extrude Swarm is if Ring of Pus is available. Undead inherently have stories to them. Stories of who they once were, now lost. The horrors inflicted upon them, and the tales that their master forces them to do. What's interesting about the stories of the Hullathoin is that they can be all of the above. An isolated town up in the mountains is periodically cut off by powerful blizzards for a week or more at a time. For a generation or two, or even longer, within these blizzards, the town is under siege not by an army, but by an unnatural cloud of buzzing insects that turn everyone they kill into vampire spawn. Within the blizzard, and immune to cold, a Hullathoin hunts the town. It doesn't want to take out the town. It's too valuable a source of corpses. While a Hullathoin cannot create the undead, its blood-fiend locusts certainly can. While within the blizzard, the Hullathoin directs its vampire spawn to flush out its victims, and then unleashes the blood-fiend locust to bring new dead into the fold. Hired and brought in to find the source of the buzzing blizzard, just imagine the party's surprise when the snow gives way and it's not a vampire directing the spawn, but an undead dragon. Unlike normal undead, the Hullathoin can quote-unquote rebuke undead, allowing them to take control of any undead creature. The Hullathoin has the ability to rebuke undead, allowing them to take control of any nearby undead creature. For the most part, this is a ribbon feature since the Hullathoin is not going to rebuke its own undead. The thing is, not all undead are allied together. In a D&D game I play in, one kingdom in the region is basically a kingdom of necromancers. Not an evil empire like you might imagine, but one that in great times of need turn towards their dead to save them, and have formed a bond of trust and respect with their undead you would never ever see with a lich. The kingdom can call forth a massive army of undead to protect itself. Everything from zombies to skeletons to ghosts. They're pretty formidable since they have an undead horde at their command which outnumbers essentially any other army save a demonic one. An extremely loyal army that the kingdom depends on. The Hullathoin has the potential to shatter that army in a way few can, thanks to its rebuke undead. The story could be that a powerful lich wants to control the kingdom and is using several Hullathoin to target and turn the kingdom's own defenders against its people. A general or a powerful champion is captured and now serves the Lich under the control of a Hullathoin. The party could be hired to eliminate the Hullathoins before the defense is hollowed out and the capital falls, perhaps even sent out specifically to free, one way or another, the enslaved valiant defenders before they are unleashed on the people they once protected. I cannot imagine a necromancer or lich that does not want a Hullathoin to serve as the vanguard for their undead legion. They're sort of the ideal servant, a rare, independent undead with the means of being able to make and capture more undead. The story could take place during a conflict the party has with the necromancer, the party trying to thwart the necromancer before it's able to raise a massive undead army. Unfortunately, both sides learn of a rogue Hullathoin sealed away in a long-forgotten prison. That Hullathoin might be the piece of the puzzle to the undead horde the necromancer needs, and the party will basically have to get to and take out the Hullathoin before it joins the necromancer, and the undead cover the entire countryside. Dragons can be made undead. See the Hullathoin, for instance. Undead can be raised in theory. You kill the undead and then cast Raise Dead, Resurrection, or True Resurrection, depending on the length that it's been dead, to get them back into the land of the living. So, in theory, maybe that Hullathoin can be brought back. Now, I personally would not want to bring back a black dragon, but maybe becoming a Hullathoin can be inflicted upon any dragon corpse. The story could be that a gold dragon gets killed and a skilled necromancer raises them as a Hullathoin. The party could be hired to track down and kill the Hullathoin within a time limit set by the highest possible level of raised dead that the party or the patron has access to. If it's recent, the party could have 10 days to do it thanks to the raised dead's limitation. If the Hullathoin has been around for a long time, maybe part of the journey is finding someone capable of casting Resurrection, and then the cost to do it on top of slaying the beast. Dragons like to think themselves as the alpha predators, masters of both might and magic. Yet, the Hullathoin shows there is almost no creature that is truly safe from the unholy grasp of undeath. No soul that can't be twisted, nor corpse that can't be perverted. And I think that's pretty neat. I mean, neat from a storytelling perspective. And I hope you do too. In the description below, I have a link to a monster stat block for the Hullathoin updated to the 2024 edition of Dungeons & Dragons, ready for you to unleash upon your world. As we are a growing channel, if you found this interesting, please leave a like and a subscribe for all our future videos. It really does mean the world. Let me thank all of you for your time and wishing you all the best until we meet again for our next monster.